book, don't get stuck on sad pages. Rainy days with no money. Hard work lead to days that are sunny. Looking back, it was all needed. The problems, the pain, the trauma, the grieving. You are now tuned in to the prisoner to painter. Prisoner to painter. Hard work, dedication. Rainy days, inspiration. Prisoner to painter. And now, a word from your local Pope dealer.
I'm Nathan McDermott, and with me, of course, my wife, Caitlyn.
Hello.
This is the first episode, season 1, episode 1. Of course, a little nervousness and some growing pains to get out of the way. I figured who better to grow with than my wife before I get another guest or another person or another topic to have on the show. So I guess to start, I guess I will let you guys know what I want to do, the forum I want to take. So hello, welcome to the podcast. Today I have Katie at the table, like breaking bread with whoever. So thank you for coming on the show.
It's great to be the trial run here.
Well, hopefully it turns out great. I did write a couple of notes. That's what I keep looking at. But well, why we're here is in the name. But I'm excited to learn more about you and your story, because that's what this is all about.
Well,
Kitties. Kitties are allowed in podcasts.
Before we get started on my story, what made you want to do the podcast?
So, honestly, the news, social media, and the world always focuses on the bad. The bad part of my story, the bad part of other people's stories. They always find a way to pull the bad right out of something that could be great. And I feel like the world needs to hear more inspirational things, like honestly, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I feel like if certain people that are still in despair can see some inspiration, then maybe they can dig their way out of it.
Okay.
Awesome. So, on to what I hope will be the forum, or because I don't want to stick to a certain agenda. I want it to be a good conversation, but
you want it to flow.
And I've noticed from a lot of podcasts that they clearly have their wits about them. So I guess this is us getting our wits about us.
Okay.
So I would like to start where it all started for you. So I guess the beginning of your story, maybe your childhood.
Yeah. I don't really remember a lot of my childhood. It's touch and go. I do know that I had issues with my parents not being together, and I had issues paying attention in school. That I was on medications at a very young age, made my hair fall out, made me fall asleep in class, things of that nature. And then, I just was always too much.
How do you think your parents being separated affected you?
Oh, I have abandonment issues for sure. I'm always afraid that people are going to hate me. And that's like setting boundaries with people. That's telling people no. That's taking time for myself. I'm always afraid that it's going to make people not want to be my friend or be around me or not be near me anymore because I just needed something and they weren't willing to give me that.
Well, we are clearly Jackson-based.
Yeah.
So where did you grow up in the county?
I grew up in Concord.
Grew up in Concord, so you're a hillbilly.
Oh, yeah. In the middle of nowhere.
Awesome.
I feel like we had more deer than people.
Awesome. That's why you love animals, I take it?
No. I mean, I've always had pets. Animals don't hurt your feelings. They just bite you.
Well, at least you know where you stand.
Right. It's not like the invisible claws that people can have.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, so grew up in Concord, have abandonment issues. I take it related to your father. And then just fast forward a little bit. What would you say middle school was like for you?
Middle school was awful. I hated it. 10 out of 10. Do not recommend.
But you're so smart. So really, it could not have been. I shouldn't say it like that. I'm also trying to work on my words of speaking. So you are so smart and intelligent, I have a feeling that it was not due to academics. So
Academically, actually, my grades weren't the best because I didn't want to sit still and pay attention in school. It got boring. There was times I definitely knew what they were talking about. I remember there was one time my freshman year, I was sleeping at my desk, and the teacher was talking about power conversions, like AC, DC power conversions, and I was half asleep, but I knew, and he called on me and thought it was going to be a surprise, but I repeated what he said perfectly, and then laid back down and went to sleep, and he didn't mess with me the rest of the class.
Well, backtracking, you said you were put on meds at a young age. Do you think that might have played a role in what you just explained your middle school experience to be like?
Kinda. I think mainly it was social struggles. The meds, because I got off the meds about 4th, 5th grade. That, and I also was an early bloomer. I mean, I've been the same height since I was like 12 or 13. So a lot of it was physical pain. I played volleyball in middle school, messed my knees up, so my knees aren't that great.
Is there any other things that you did in school that are worth mentioning on the show?
I took so many art classes throughout. Any art class I could take, I took.
Well, you made this whole show possible for me, so thank you. That's awesome. I guess fast forward to high school, since we're talking about what it was like. So we kind of went through your childhood pretty quickly, in my opinion, to try to get through an hour. So that's also what we're trying to do, is try to see how we can get.
Well, like I said, I don't really remember a lot of childhood. I think that's a trauma thing, where maybe some things had happened or some experiences where I just don't. My brain thinks it's better not to remember. So, high school, I went to the same school until I was 16, and then my last 2 years of high school, I went to 2 different schools.
I assume that was rough, changing from a school you've attended forever and then changing at such a late time in life?
Not really. I knew a lot of people. I went to East Jackson first.
Shout out Trojans!
Just heard Miss Collier retired. Sweet. Congratulations. So I knew a lot of people. I actually begged my mom to get me out of the middle of nowhere.
Gotcha.
So.
Did it make you feel isolated living so far away from town?
Oh, for sure. And then if I wanted to do anything, it took a lot of planning to go do things with friends. But yeah, so I went to East Jackson, and then I finished out my junior year there, and then my senior year I went to Northwest. Hashtag Mounties. But that was a culture shock, because my school was so small. And then when I get there, it was so many people. I only made one friend in a couple friends in my age group. Yeah, so that was hard. I mainly focused on my grades. It was the first time in my life I got an A in math.
well, on the topic of school, hopefully eventually we have some younger viewers. Is there anything you would say to yourself in high school right now?
It's about the routine. You gotta learn the routine.
Okay.
You really do. They just want to see that you show up. I'm not saying don't. Yeah, I'm not saying don't do your work. I'm saying that there are ways you can ask for an extension. You will have a teacher who seems like they're out to get you, but they're not. I promise.
They're there to help you.
They're there to help, and it might be a challenge to them. They might have fun with how challenging it might be. I know personally, my art teacher from Concord would give us an assignment, and I'd finish it in 2 days, and they'd be like, "Come on." Like, really? I'm like, well, I want to do something else. So give me something else right now.
My favorite art teacher was Mrs. Gunderson.
Oh, yeah. I love Miss Gunderson. She was fantastic.
She was.
She actually got me to repaint the Persistence of Memory on the wall.
You're going to have to refresh my memory.
It's a Salvador Dali. It's the painting on the wall by where her classroom was. It's like a guy's face melting, and there's clocks.
Okay, can we pull that up for reference? I think this is how we get more time out of the podcast. I'm speaking of
I actually have a picture of what it looks like when I repainted it on my Facebook. Give me one second.
Well, that's cool.
I don't know if I'm be able to show it on the...
I'll hold it up to the camera since this is the growing pain of things, right?
Aha. The colors were a little off, but that's okay. It took about 14 hours.
Tell me if they can see it.
Yeah, kind of. There you go. It's blurry because it's from camera to phone, but that's okay.
It was worth a shot. There you go.
But yeah, no, Miss Gunderson was amazing. She made me feel included. It was great.
Do you think the way kids treat each other might have contributed to what's going to be the middle part of your story of what happened? Do you think kids are cruel, or do you think kids don't know any better, or do you think both?
I think kids have mob mentality.
Elaborate.
Where if one person's saying one thing, they don't want to feel excluded, so they're more like bandwagon. They're more likely to jump on the bandwagon than to express themselves. But I actually think that's changing.
Mm-hmm.
Kids nowadays express themselves pretty great, actually. Yeah.
So, in summary, it sounds like you had an all right childhood. You don't remember much.
I think I remember the good parts.
In school?
School, I would not do it over again. If I had to, I would do things a lot differently. I would focus on my studies, getting into college, things like that.
Okay, so then there had to come a tipping point for you to A, want to come on the show, there B, to have such an impactful story to want to share it. There had to have been a tipping point, and what would you say your tipping point was?
Many failed relationships. So I was on my own, working, getting burned out from work, not knowing about burnout. I mean, I had been in and out of counseling most of my life, but I never really talked about my issues. I more like diverted the conversation into casual conversation, intelligent conversation. But then when I was an adult and I started working, it made it harder to stay base level. And then you throw in, okay, well, my relationship with my boyfriends were not good. Any of them, really. I mean, they started out great. There was good and the bad, but some of them it was more bad than good. And then I tried to go to college for a little bit, and that was full-time. I did double credits. It was awful. Working, going to college, having not so stable relationships with my boyfriends, things like that. So the tipping point was really when I had a friend get me a job, and I had been doing the job for 3 months or so. Things in my relationship at that point were terrible. I had moved in with my sister. He actually moved in as well. My sister was not in that great of a relationship at the time. So having him there was kind of not what it was supposed to be. I moved in there to get away. Yeah. And I had a very public meltdown at work and never came back. And that day I went home to my sister and I freaked out and I told her I needed help, and she actually drove me to our local community health institution, which is Lifeways, and started the process of getting into therapy and all that.
Well, then I feel like we skipped a lot. And like I said, I know this is a learning curve, so next time and the time after we just get better and better. You said that you were in counseling prior. When did you start counseling?
Oh, I don't really, it was like church counselors. My mom had, when I was about 15, my mom had put me in to one of the counseling organizations, but like I said, it was kind of a smoke screen. I used it to get what I wanted. I wanted a therapy pet. My therapist suggested it, meaning like a hamster or something, and I convinced my mom to get me a gecko. And that's not really what he meant. It was kind of tormenting. My mom didn't like lizards, if you can believe that or not.
That's crazy considering that, that is wild. Wow. You just have such an impactful story. I clearly, I know it, and I know you well enough, so, but I don't want to pry, because like, if people know you, so people that are watching that know you know that you're being very light right now, and that's great, but your story is, I think it is beneficial for people to hear how far down the scales you have gone and what you did to dig yourself back out.
So I didn't leave my house
Mm-hmm.
for a very long time. COVID exasperated that, actually. And I was in an abusive relationship pre-COVID. It was on and off for 5-6 years. He was older. It was not very good. I got into doing a lot of drugs. There was a couple scenarios where I thought it was paranoia, but he was having people watch me at the house. And we broke that off. I met somebody, moved across the country to get away from him, and then come back, and it's like the hooks were back in, I guess. I couldn't stay away. It was under the guise of being around kids, because you know how bad I want to be a parent. So, this was right before I met you, and I did not go anywhere unless I planned on staying there all day or had somebody go with me, like my safety babysitter person.
Well, clearly I'm very proud of you, and I know your story, and I'm sorry to pry, but I feel like that is like the most important part.
But that I didn't leave my house, but that eventually I did.
No, the trauma that you went through, I feel like it shows how triumphant that you really are, because so like David beating Goliath is a triumphant story, and I feel like you're David and that was Goliath, and because that's a lot cooler than a guy beating up a dog or something. It's like you have a triumphant story. It's not a little man. I think your story is enough to inspire the world.
Well, the hardest part of recovery is that for a lot of the abuse, I was on LSD. So my brain registers the trauma with the LSD.
MK Ultra.
Yes, MK Ultra. It was mind control. It was a form of mind control, and I might get hate on anybody who knows, but you know that's just how it goes. Because there are people who were there who I felt like should have protected me a little more. But now, after no longer doing drugs, no longer doing toxic behaviors and making bad choices, I feel like therapy has gotten easier. For a minute there, I was doing the EMDR therapy, where you move your eyeballs.
Would you mind telling us a little more about that for the people that don't know?
So you develop a container that you put thoughts that you can't handle in to handle them when you're more equipped. But basically, you're rewiring your brain through bilateral stimulation. So either with your eyes moving or tapping it in. And a person has to be trained in order to do it, because you can actually traumatize yourself even further. But it is very intense. I know you remember the day I called after therapy and I could not drive because it threw me into an acid flashback, and the parking lot was an ocean. So that was very intense. There's coping. So you need to develop the container to be able to put something away and deal with it at a later time. Kind of like The Shining. Kind of like Dr. Sleep when he puts the stuff in the...
So I know we powered through the tipping point. I'm trying to learn how to drag out a conversation, so I apologize, but I feel like we went through the tipping point very quickly. So you were in an abusive relationship for 6 years. Physically?
Emotionally, sexually, physically. I mean, it never got physical, but when it did, I mean, we were both...
Well, if it's sexual, then that would still imply physical.
Yes.
Understood. So I had a lot of trauma from a very terrible guy, as I understand him.
Well, I mean, there was good parts to him.
Always. There's always good in the bad and bad in the good. Definitely. Yeah. So you were in an abusive relationship, and then enough was enough.
Yeah.
And then you went to counseling?
Yeah. It's less black and white, because there was
sure.
a break, and then there was me going back thinking things would be different, and it would be me sitting at his house waiting for him all day because he was out doing drugs with another lady, making me feel like I wasn't important. So
I'm sure that weighed on the emotional a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it did.
If you're comfortable, would you tell us a little more? If you're not, we can skip ahead to how you started getting, when you first thought you started getting on the right path back to health, recovery, a life you want.
So it did initially start with me getting into therapy the first time, but it took me a couple therapists to get through. Right before we had met, it was my second longest therapist before the one I have now, and she was great.
Awesome.
I mean, she's the one who, you know how I feel with the drug use, about how taking medication every single day to try to feel normal, it reminded me a lot of needing to do a substance to feel normal.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say she talked me into it, but, we weighed the pros and cons, and I know that for the first 2 years we were together, I tried every type of medication, and you dealt with all of the crazy side effects. And then I got to the point where I decided it was mind over matter, and it took a lot of coping skills, like learning new ones, unlearning unhealthy behaviors.
Do you think you needed the medication to be able to get to a place to where coping skills would be the only thing that would work?
I did, yes. Even though I switched a lot, and then I finally found one, and then there was the weird side effects that my doctor was like, whoa, we need to stop. It did help. It helped me plateau to like a normal baseline, and then now when I drop, it's like I have better preparation to deal with those things.
Understood. So you went to counseling, you started getting healthier, you got put on medication, or multiple medications, and then started getting better with the coping skills, or better with the coping skills.
Right, and there are things that are negative coping, like, when I had my meltdowns, I would dissociate and I would not be there. That was negatively coping, and I could not control the dissociation, but now I actually use it as a tool sometimes.
Well, since this is an informative podcast, what is dissociating?
For me, it was like I wasn't in my body. It was like I was watching something happen and I could do nothing to control it. And then somehow I would get my body to do things like harm myself, or even lash out at, like, you, for instance, we've been there, to bring me back. I have learned there's ways to do that with, like, essential oils and grounding techniques and things like that, so I didn't necessarily need to hurt myself to come out of it. Yeah.
So I know the story, but I'm not inside your brain. So you start getting healthier, you go to counseling, you're less afraid to go outside. When you finally, you're like, I'm ready to go back to society. That's putting it too plainly, but I'm ready to go back to society. Where did you first work? When you were ready to go get another job, where did you first work? I'm just curious. Not your first job. You're like, okay.
Like when I was ready to integrate back. Well, I wasn't ever ready.
Yeah.
And
but we lived in Lansing, and I remember.
I worked at Arby's for 3 days.
But I bring it up because the end of this story. So give us a little great. Please tell them about Arby's in Lansing by. I don't care. What are they gonna do?
I don't know. It was by the Lansing Mall.
We lived off of Thomas Parkway, so off of Saginaw, off of Saginaw Highway.
No, I worked there, and it was awful. I hated it. The quality was not good.
Yeah. So, but that played into your mental health, right? That you can't give bad grapes to people, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So they had not so choice produce, and I couldn't knowingly serve somebody something wrong.
So before you started having an issue with working and going into public, you had a public meltdown at a job.
Yep.
And then you go through counseling, you get put on meds, you think, I'm ready to go back into society, a couple years later. Did you have a meltdown when you left that place? Or did you just say, you know what, I'm good? Did you see growth?
I did have a little bit of a meltdown, but it was because I was worried that I was failing, and I remember calling you. And that's why you remember the grapes so vividly,
Yeah.
because the meltdown was about grapes. So
But did you have a public meltdown, or did you see growth? Because I don't remember anywhere.
it was not public.
That's
It was a private meltdown.
So you see the growth in that.
Yeah.
Okay, so counseling and meds helped you, so I'm sure it can help others. Awesome.
And then fast forward a year or two, we moved back to Jackson.
Yep.
And I think it was just, you knew it was time for me to try to do something. I wasn't quite ready, but I thank you for kind of pushing me in the right direction. I got into actually what I do. I was receiving the services, and that was great. It got me out of the house. It got me excited to go do things. And then I got my current job, which I'm not going to talk much on. But yeah.
See, this is and I know we probably didn't even fill 30 minutes, but I'm not going to drag everything out. Just when I feel like we're done and we got a good baseline and something to do. But this is, to me, going to be the favorite part of any show, is what it's like now.
What it's like now.
What it's like now. What all the bad and all the terrible stuff we went through, and how you could never be a success, and now how you're a success. This is the best part.
I enjoy showing people that they can recover, that they can go through. Because you're right, I was keeping it lighthearted. I didn't want to go through the heavy and depress people and talk about very traumatic stories that we both have went through, or that I just have went through, at the risk of re-traumatizing people from their own things. But I think it's great because you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're in the tunnel.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't even fathom how things can be.
Or how they can get better.
Or how they can get better, or what steps you can take to make it better. And I think that is so great that to be able to have the opportunity to talk to people, like even just sharing my story, or sharing your story, or even sharing our story is beneficial. I know a couple of my friends didn't really know much about it, and then I started talking, and the one thing they said is, wow, you guys have been through a lot. We really have. I have. You have. I don't know, do you wanna talk about how we met?
If there's one thing I want anybody to take out of this podcast, is if it helps one person, that is all I care.
Oh yeah.
That is all I care about. If one person today got anything out of this, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, did you wanna
whoa.
briefly?
I'm the host here. I'm the host.
Okay,
here.
so.
Would you care to explain how
I'm going to.
Okay.
So in 2020, the start of COVID, I had a family member. You need to get out of the house. We're gonna go to Houghton now. I'm like, is there even a Houghton now? They're like, the last one that's working is in Sturgis. We're gonna go. Sturgis, Michigan, Houghton now. So dragged me out of the house. I'm like, man, I really don't want to go, but I'm going to go because I want the food. And I got my dog. I got Mr. Popo with me. And we went, and somewhere, because there was a group of people going, somewhere along the way we stopped. And you seen me in the car. And you came up and said, do you have treats for your doggy? And I was like, I actually do. And I remember we left, and then we stopped for gas somewhere on the way. And you had intentionally started a fight in the car to come and sit in our car.
Something like that, yeah.
Because this was back active addiction for you.
Yes, very active.
Yep, I believe my first sentiments about you were, who is this drunk butthead?
I think butthead was nice.
It was nice. It was nice.
Yeah, it was nice. Thank you.
And then, we ended up spending the rest of the day together after the whole trip. After you fed my dog way too much fast food. And spent the whole day together. And then I think we went about a week without talking. And then you came and hung out.
So I feel like we went to where I was supposed to go, and then we went way back. So what it's like now. So what are you most grateful about now that you would tell the young you?
The young me.
Like, you just hold out. In another 10 years, you'll
Have
own
a
a house, or you'll...
Have a supportive partner is the biggest thing. I've always... Oh, stop. I have always had partners who either actively tried to change me or made me feel like I was too much or everything was wrong. And they didn't push for the good in me. They pushed my buttons to try to get me. It's reactive abuse. They would do something to get me to react, and then I'm the problem because I was reacting that way, when in reality they know what they said and did to make me react that way.
So, and I feel like we skipped this. That was also very crucial. So you have mental health problems. You go to counseling. You get on meds.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get better, healthy. And then you are in the mental health field, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why you know about things like... Remind me of what...
Reactive abuse, trauma, EMDR,
Yeah.
which is, I don't remember what the letters stand for. It's a therapy type.
Okay.
It's also from years of therapy.
So you also... So now that you found the light at the end of the tunnel, you made it out, you bought a house, you're successful, 2 cars in the driveway, animals fed, don't have to worry about nothing. Now that we made it this far, you decided to take the more humble route and give back to the community instead of taking my less humble route and paint cars and make a lot of money. So what made you decide that I'm going to work with the population?
I wanted a job that made me feel good about myself.
And does it?
It does. That's not why I do it, but it's rewarding. So there's that.
So it's nice giving people hope.
Yes.
That you lacked, maybe.
Being a hope dealer is fantastic.
Awesome. That's phenomenal. I'm so happy to hear this, and I'm so happy that this went as good as it did. Yeah. You know, I hate to even ask in the middle of this, but Katie, how long have we been going?
31 minutes.
You know, that's better than I thought.
Mr. Chris Cooley gave a shout out.
Okay. Hey, Skittles.
What's up?
Holler.
He said Flat Master P and the famous Caitlyn McDermott. And then he said, oh, I remember the grapes.
That's awesome. Skittles will be on the show eventually. He was, I'm not going to tell his story, but he was down and out like myself, and now he runs a recovery center.
Yeah.
So there is hope for everybody. There is hope.
I think your biggest goal here is to share that people can get out of any situation, regardless of how they do it.
Yep.
And that it's really about what being a success means to you.
Jackson is not just a prison city.
No.
Jackson is not just a prison city. We have recovery, we have businesses, we have people.
We have wonderful local businesses.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I was going to wait until the end of the show, but I've decided a part of every podcast I'm going to do, I'm going to hand a gift certificate about a business out to my guest. It just so happens Katie is my guest. Next week it'll be a different business and it'll be a different guest. And I wrote this down, not because they told me to, this is just me, because I really like what they have, and I really like this company. So, Nostalgia Inc., located 139 South Mechanic Street, Jackson, Michigan, 49201. They're a one-stop shop for new and old comic books, graphic novels, tabletop games, miniatures, supplies, and more. They are celebrating nearly 40 years of being in business, which is phenomenal for being a small comic book shop. Yep. So we're not just a prison city. We have great businesses. They donated a certificate for whoever's going to be on the show. So I'd like to give that to you and say thank you to Nostalgia Inc. And
I know recently they just had somebody break in, shatter their front door.
You know, that's sad. I've seen that, and I feel like a small business is the definition of drive and the definition of I will get it done. And then for somebody to say, you know what, we're going to break it, that is that's sickening, I guess is the right word. And especially that I used to be the guy that would do the breaking.
Yeah, but you also don't know everybody's experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not devil's advocate.
Yeah.
You don't know what they were going through. You know, like, I don't know what they took or if they did anything. Yeah. Maybe they just damaged property.
No excuse for vandalism.
There's no excuse for vandalism. But you also got to keep in mind that there's 3 sides to every story.
Your side, my side, and the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to end with that. Stay tuned. We are going to put out a podcast every Sunday.
We're actually gonna switch from Facebook Live to YouTube. We just had to wait
Go
for the
through the
verification.
verification.
Yeah.
So this has been amazing. Thank you for going through the growing pains with us. And this is going to become something big. And I know it. I know it, and I'm going to persist without exception. Logging off.
Have a good one, guys.